Deputy State Engineer for Development. As you probably heard, in addition to my retirement from the department, Scott Omer is also retiring from the department. His last day as a state employee will be a week from Friday. And Kismet Wise will be replacing Scott as the Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Director. If you have not heard, Greg Byers, as of Saturday, will be the next state engineer and Deputy Director for Transportation. Greg is the current planning director for ADOT. And then the last update I had, you can tune in tomorrow and see Greg present the 5-year program. It is a program that is quite a bit bigger than the ones in the past, especially in the 3rd and 4th, 5th years, quite a bit bigger, in the neighborhood of, looking at the whole program, $500 million. Of that, most of it are additional state funds. About $100 million of that per year is federal in the program. The rest is state funds. And that's all the updates I had.
Okay, thank you, Dallas. Any acting planning director, or is Greg just going to keep that for a while until a new director is appointed for transportation planning?
I am looking for an announcement by the end of the week.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service to the state of Arizona, starting back in the days of Yuma. You've been around the state, and I think you served ADOT and the citizens of Arizona very well as state engineer, and for all 20 plus years with the department.
That's correct. Almost 20, just under 23. And no, it was a pleasure. It was great working with this community. And I'm not done working with everyone. I will be joining Horrocks engineers starting next week. So I will be continuing to work in the transportation field.
All right. Thank you for mentioning that. I was going to ask you if you wouldn't mind indicating what your next role will be. So wishing you well in that capacity.
Yes, thank you, Dallas.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and introduce the speaker, and before he gets into his presentation, you may want to give some other FHWA updates if he has some. And Anthony Sarhan is the Deputy Division Administrator in Arizona, and he is going to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I think I got the title incorrectly, but he'll get it right. And Anthony has been in the Arizona office for 4 years now, and I believe you came from Washington State, but if I lied about that, you can correct me. And if I go on, I'll just tell more lies that I make up. So Anthony, welcome, and thank you for offering to present today.
Sure, sure thing, Steve, and you got a good memory. Yes, I joined from Washington State. I'd been up there about 10 years before coming here. But good morning, everybody. And yeah, I'll be getting into a presentation on the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act here. A few quick announcements. So first is there was a NOFO that was released earlier this week and is going to be published in the Federal Register probably later this week for the RAISE program. So that's the old Tiger program. So that's out right now. And then a quick staffing update. Jennifer Acuna is the new area engineer within the Arizona Division office. She's backfilling Eunice Chan's old area engineer position, and her first day with us was on Monday. So we're slowly getting fully staffed back up to full speed. Have a few more updates coming. We still need to backfill an environmental position. Probably since the last time we had met, we had a change. Rebecca Yedlin is the new environmental program manager. She had been an environmental specialist in our office, and she replaced Jennifer Elskin, who left the Arizona division for a promotion to the Utah division. So just a couple of things moving around. And with that, yeah, I will go ahead and see if I can get this screen share going. So Steve, let me know if I've got that right.
Yes, you're good, Anthony.
Okay, well, go ahead and jump into it. So yes, so this morning we're going to be giving a brief overview of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The terms are used pretty interchangeably. So getting into the details. So for background, the IIJA signed into law by President Biden on November 15th, again, known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And I want to highlight this website that's shown down here. FHWA is trying to make things as easy as possible in terms of having all the information available in one location, and we have a dedicated website to it. It's pretty straightforward, fhwa.dot.gov/bipartisan infrastructure law. And a lot of the information that I'm going to be going over in today's presentation actually comes from the website. So let's go ahead and jump in. So if you go to the website, which you can go either through your favorite search engine, or as I know most of you probably have, FHWA's website shared in your favorites and you visit it frequently, it's pretty easy to find in one of the tabs. And this is what the landing page is going to look like. I want to highlight these tabs here. That's how the website is organized in terms of getting information out to everybody. And I'm gonna go over just a few of the things that are located on the site, plus some background on the bipartisan infrastructure law, and really focus on a few things that are of interest right now. And that is primarily the continuation of what's known as sort of the core programs or the legacy programs that carried over from the FAST Act, plus two of the new programs that are in the IIJA that are of interest to folks. That'll be the Bridge Formula program and the EV program. So a lot of the slides that you're going to see today are actually from this PowerPoint that is posted on the website. So if you go to the overview tab, you'll have access to these slides as both a PowerPoint or a PDF version. It's got some really good information on there. And since it is Groundhog Day, I know many of you have probably seen some of this already, so it's just a little bit of a repeat, but hopefully I'll be able to give you some good flavor in terms of the details and some of the areas and how it might pertain to Arizona. So first things first, let's talk a little bit about the bipartisan infrastructure law. It really is a very large encompassing piece of legislation. It does go beyond just transportation. It really is a huge investment in infrastructure. If you see the third bullet down there, there's around $550 billion in new federal infrastructure investment spread across multiple sectors. And right now, at least in the beginning, they're looking about supporting around 2 million jobs per year. So a very sizable investment in the from the federal government.
On a daily basis. I mean, do you remember the
Beg pardon? Okay. So looking at the breakdown of what's included in the bipartisan infrastructure law, you can see it touches most of the modes. The Federal Highway Administration does have pretty much the largest chunk of that money, and it is split into two sort of different categories of money. It's a continuation of the contract authority, which is our traditional programs. Think about programs that are funded from the Highway Trust Fund. And then there's this bucket of money called advance appropriations. There's some technicalities around how those two are defined, but it really is a combination of both money from the Highway Trust Fund and money that came from Congress through the general fund out of the Treasury. Looking at a breakdown of the highway provisions that come out of the IIJA or the bill, you can see the breakdown on the highway programs is about $350 billion. This is nationally over 5 years, with the split between the contract authority and money that's coming out of the general fund. Now, there are a lot of new programs that come with the bill, and there's a split between new formula programs and a lot of new discretionary programs. And you'll notice there's some overlap in several of those areas. We are going to focus the discussion today a lot on the formula programs and some of the new, and again, the new program that has to do with the bridge formula program and the EV program. The other thing I want to highlight is that bullet point down at the bottom. There was a $90 billion transfer to the Highway Trust Fund account to keep it solvent. Essentially, the Highway Trust Fund should remain solvent throughout the life of the bill. If you've been following the discussions over the last several years, you know that spending out of the Highway Trust Fund has been larger than the money coming in. And this is, I've lost track of how many rounds there's been infusions of money from Congress into the Highway Trust Fund to help keep it solvent. Something else to keep in mind with these numbers is that we are right now working under a continuing resolution that runs through February 18th. And so even though the IIJA is in effect right now, we are operating under the 2021 Appropriations Act levels. So if you look at some of the summaries about what Arizona is supposed to get, the program went from about $800 million a year to Arizona to, rough number about $1 billion a year to Arizona under the new program. However, right now they are operating under what's known as their obligation limitation that is tied to the 2021 levels and further constrained by the limitations that are in place because the continuing resolution only runs through February 18th. So the money's coming into Arizona, but it's not like they just received a big pot of money from the federal government. It's coming slowly in, and we are awaiting further action by Congress before things really start to come fully in force here in the state. This table doesn't cover the full range of how the funding is going to be made available under the IIJA, but it does give you an idea about how widespread it's going to be and across all of the different programs that are in place. One of the things to notice is that there is some focus on getting money out into local hands. And in fact, there is one program that you'll see there, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which we're not going to go into in much detail today, that actually is only available to entities other than the state. So the MPOs, local agencies, and the tribes. This, again, this table's not fully encompasses everything that's in the IIJA, but it gives you a sense of what is out there and how the money is going to be spread. Okay, so getting into the core of what we're going to discuss today, you know, the IIJA does continue the key apportioned formula programs. That's the National Highway Performance Program, the Surface Transportation Block Grant, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, CMAQ planning, and the National Highway Freight Program. So those are those first columns that you see that are in blue with the new numbers. Over on the right-hand side, you do see the two new programs, formula programs that are included in the bill, the Carbon Reduction Program and what's known as the Protect Formula Program. That's a resilience program that's in place. Because we're operating under a CR right now, or a continuing resolution right now, we haven't been able to actually start that. It's one of the provisions that's in the CR where, you know, you can't advance new starts programs. So all of the money that is coming into the state right now really is tied up in those first 6 programs that are the carryover programs from the FAST Act. And these are the ones that ADOT has had, you know, been working on for years. It's right in their programming. They're very familiar with them. Other than some of the updates and new eligibilities and everything, it's pretty much, you know, a continuation of the programs as they existed previously. With those programs, the first set of fact sheets have been released, giving details on the eligibilities, the rules that are around them, and the updates. If you go back to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law website, you can access those fact sheets here. They're pretty good summaries of what's in there, and a good useful tool to see what's available in each one of those programs. So this is definitely an area that I would recommend folks go look at if they want to know more about a certain area. So looking at what are the changes in each one of these areas, we're going to run through a series of slides that's been produced for each ones. This just gives you a general overview of what has changed in each one of these programs since they were in place in the FAST Act. So the first one we'll be talking about is the National Highway Performance Program. You saw from the chart, that's the largest chunk of money that's available. It does have some additional activity that's in the program about increasing resilience on the national highway system. It does also have a pretty significant expansion in eligibility, including the undergrounding of public utility infrastructure that's carried out with a project. And you'll see down below at the bottom, there is this consideration of extreme weather and resilience that's in there. You're going to see a lot of that theme that's in the bill, a lot of talk about resilience. I also want to draw your attention to the top corner there, where I've got the red circle. You'll see that section that's highlighted there. If you go out and you pull the presentation off of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law website and you grab the presentation on these slides, you'll see the section label up there. And it refers directly to the section in the law. So if you want to have a side-by-side of the legal language that's actually in there to what you're seeing on the slides, feel free to go ahead and pull the roughly 1,100 page IIJA, which is also available on the site, and you can read the language side by side. It actually is pretty enlightening to go through and read some of the details that are in here, how the language is written by Congress. But you do have to have some familiarity going back and forth between what's here and what's already in place to get a full sense of what each section is talking about. Okay, moving on, we have the changes to the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, or the STBG. This is our most flexible pot of funding generally in the formula program. And you'll see some changes that are in place. We're starting to see our first inclusion of EV charging infrastructure. EV is an electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Again, we see resilience shows up. There is also some eligibility for standalone wildlife crossing projects. There is also an increase to the off-system bridge element that's in there. We're going to touch off-system bridge again. Just quick circle on off-system bridges. Off-system bridges are those bridges that are not on the federal aid system. So you're looking at bridges that are either locally owned. They could also be on a non-locally owned route that is functionally classified outside of the federal aid system. Another big change to the STBG program is the 2 new sub-allocation bands. FHWA is actually still working on the calculations for those sub-allocations. So ADOT does not actually have the information right now on how that sub-allocation is to occur, are anxiously awaiting it. And once it comes out, that'll be another piece of information that goes into how the money is going to be distributed within the state. There are also some changes to the transportation alternatives set aside. So the STBG has a set aside that's in there for what we call TA, or transportation alternatives programs. This is things like safe routes to school. It's a pretty popular program that's in place. One of the big changes is the increase in the portion that has to be sub-allocated. It increased from 50 to 59%. HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, has also had some pretty big changes that are in place. The one that I do want to highlight, though, is down there at the bottom, this vulnerable road user safety assessment. This is something that is in the law, and you'll see it is this requirement to take in consideration a safe system approach. FHWA has been talking about a safe system approach for over a year. It's sort of a holistic whole look approach at things, generally taking into consideration that humans are going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that they need to die in a car crash or an accident that happens on a roadway. So a lot of you may have seen what they call the Swiss cheese model, where you have multiple layers to sort of catch everything. But that's going to be an effort that's undertaken here in the coming years about doing this vulnerable road user assessment. There are some changes to the rail highway crossing program as well. You can see some set aside elimination that's there for protective devices. Instead, it sort of generalizes the use of funding a little more. There is some interest in reducing the trespassing injuries that are in place. There's also an increase in the incentive payments that went from $7,500 to $100,000. The other thing is there, the third row, you'll see the federal share. It does increase the federal share for funding on this from 90% to 100%. And finally, or next, we've got the CMAQ program, just some additional eligibility that's in place on micromobility stuff. So those are your bike shares and your shared scooters. There's a lot of language in there about diesel engines and retrofits that are in place as well. And then the planning program, there's some updates to the planning program. There's a lot of, in addition to resilience, there's a lot of discussion in this bill about equity. And we start to see a lot of the equity discussions occurring in the planning program. That includes right up front, the MPO representation. There is a requirement that it be equitable and proportional to the population area that the MPO is covering. And then finally, we get to the freight program. The freight program there were some changes that were in place. The ones that I think stood out to me were down at the last row there. There's the designation of additional miles for the freight program. The thing about the National Highway Freight Program is the use of money that is in the NHFP. It actually has to be in the state's plan. That's one of the requirements for that money to be spent. So there will be an effort at updating the plan that has to be done. Plus, I imagine we'll be looking at this, the designation of additional mileage. So that's the carryover programs of the core programs from the FAST Act. So you can go and take a look at that. We do have these two new programs that are in place. We don't know much about them yet other than what you're reading in the bill. And these summaries are here, but we don't have any guidance yet. And as I said, under the limitations from being under the continuing resolution, we actually can't start these programs yet. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have new information on those, but it's the carbon reduction program and then the protect formula program. Okay, so those are the formula programs that are in place, the key ones that are in there. But we did talk about some of that money from the general fund. This money funds what's called the Highway Infrastructure Program, or HIP funding. This is a breakdown in how the HIP money is at a national level. It's generally distributed by formula, but there are some discretionary programs that are in place. We're going to talk about two of them, but this is a summary of the 9 categories that are there. The Bridge Formula Program and the National TP Formula Program are the two that are advancing the most. Here's a summary of the Bridge Formula Program. And this money has actually already started to come out as well. You'll notice up at the top, it doesn't have a section like the others do. It's in Division J. And if you're looking for Division J in the bill and you actually want to read the language that's in there, you got to go to about page 990. So it's buried way deep in the back of that. This is a program that's really aimed at replacing, rehabilitating, preserving, protecting, and constructing bridges on public roads. So I want to highlight that public roads component, because if you see down at the bottom, that other key provisions, there is some benefits for the off-system bridge projects. And the off-system bridge elements in the Bridge Formula Program, there are some differences with the off-system bridge program that's in the STBG that we talked about. But there is some of the key details that are in there. So 15% of these funds are reserved for the off-system bridge off-system bridges that come out of that. And the Bridge Formula Program does also have a fact sheet on that fact sheet site. If you look at what that means for Arizona, Arizona is going to be getting about $225 million over 5 years. That's $45 million per year. And the 15% set aside for the off-system bridges is just under $7 million per year. There are, based on the 2020 National Bridge Inventory data, 132 bridges in Arizona are in poor condition. You can go to the Bridge Formula Program's website. I don't know that there's a better, easier web address than that long drawn out thing there, but you're welcome to go there. You can probably put that in your in your search engine as well and find it, but you can see the breakdown of how the Bridge Formula Program funding is going to be distributed within each state. Not part of the Bridge Formula Program, but I do want to bring this to your attention. FHWA also has this InfoBridge website that's available to everybody. You can go in and sort on the bridge data for the state. This information comes right out of the National Bridge Inventory, and you can do all sorts of analysis, sort it, look it up on maps, see the performance history, owner agencies, etc. So it's a good resource for anybody that's interested. All right, the other new program that's getting a lot of attention is the EV program, the electric vehicle program. This is also in that HIP funding. One of the key things to know about the HIP funded program, so that'll be that national, the Bridge Formula Program and this EV Formula Program, since they come out of the general fund, they don't have the obligation limitation limits that are in place on the apportioned funds that come, those other core programs that are in there. It's just has to do with where the money comes from. You can see some of the goals that are in place are about strategically deploying an EV charging infrastructure. And I want to draw an attention in that other key provisions section. There is a requirement that the state submits a plan on how they intend to use the funds. So there is some upfront work that's going to have to be done with this. And hopefully we're going to be getting some more information about the EV Formula Program soon. Okay, there are a few other provisions that are in the bill that I want to bring to this group's attention. This is really has just been scratching the surface. There is a lot more that's in there, but these are the ones that I think most people are familiar with and that are on most people's attention. These other provisions that are in place could be of interest to you. I do want to draw attention to that first one, the roadway design guides. There is a discussion about permitting local jurisdictions to use roadway design guides that are different from the state's roadway design guide for projects that are not on the national highway systems, if that roadway design guide is recognized by FHWA and has been adopted by the local jurisdiction. The work zone process review, that's something that's more for the state. It just changes the time frame on which it's required. And then the other one that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention up there is that section 11310, the PE. This was the old 10-year PE 10-year rule. That requirement has been repealed in the law. What that was essentially if a project didn't advance to right-of-way or construction within 10 years of beginning preliminary engineering, the money needed to be paid back to the Federal Highway Administration. I know I went through a lot of stuff there, and I'm happy to take questions, but I do want to point everyone to the website again. If you've got any, for more information, please take a look there. That's going to be the place where we post everything, and it'll be your best source of information.
All right, thanks, Anthony. Any questions or comments for Anthony?
Doesn't look like we have any here in the office, unless anybody wants to chime in.
No, it was quite informative. So thank you for the information and thank you for the link to the website.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, all right, Steve, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Anthony. It was a lot of information. It's good to have a website to go back to look at. I actually did some snipping and of some of the slides to look at after the meeting. So appreciate that. I think I saw Justin come in. Justin, do you have any
Steve,
announcements?
just to
Oh.
give you, give you an idea, the full presentation that's on that website's about 72 slides. So it covers a lot more than we went over today.
Yeah, appreciate the time you took. Steve's got his hand raised. I mean, Boshin has his hand raised.
So Steve and Anthony again, thank you. I just wanted to remind everybody, we do have a 2-pager that kind of talks about the complexity of this. And you can tell by Anthony's presentation, it is very complex. So if Amerigo, you don't have that, let me know and I'll email it to you so that you can share it with all your members. And just bear with us as we move through this, and hopefully we'll get some decisions from Washington soon. ASHTO also has a position paper on this, so you might want to read up on that. So that's all I have, Steve. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Hey guys, this is,
Amerigo? Yeah,
Jess.
Justin.
can you hear me? Okay, sorry. I'm like in like weird, like, I don't know, I'm just some kind of weird vortex up here. So I'm really sorry if my audio is in and out. I apologize. Anthony, thank you so much for presenting today. I definitely caught parts of it, and I just thank you. This is really complex stuff for sure. And yeah, and I think Rosa put in the chat, thank you for the cliff notes, because boy, oh boy, do we need them. Steve Boshin, if you could please email us that 2-pager. I know we do not have it, so that'd be amazing. And I just want to take a moment to thank Dallas for everything, for his service to us as an industry. I was sad to hear that he was leaving ADOT, but I was also very gratified to hear that he was moving on to one of our member firms. So while we will certainly miss him at ADOT, we are so thankful that he is remaining active in the industry and remains a friend to us today. So just want to thank Dallas for everything. I very much appreciate it. I know you've been a huge help to me coming into this 4 years ago, literally 4 years ago, not knowing a whole lot. And boy, you've certainly taught me. And I know you've taught so many others, and I just very much appreciate that.
Steve.
All right, everybody.
Steve, I will relay those sentiments to Dallas. I do know that he had to jump at 8:30 to the director's meeting, so he did not hear that, Justin. So I will relay that though.
Very good. And Steve, one thing Dallas mentioned was that earlier, Greg is going to present the 5-year program tomorrow, but he didn't say where or how we can sign in to get to see that. Do you know?
So just like a regular board meeting, it is a study session, and if you just be at, the transportation board site, you can find you can
Yeah.
do WebEx on it. So just like a regular board meeting.
Okay, right. I wasn't thinking that it was a study session tomorrow. Yeah, I think we know how to get to that. Thanks. Any
Yeah.
other announcements or comments? Okay, our next meeting is scheduled for March 2nd, and we hope to have an equally exciting presentation from ADOT then. So thank you all for attending, and drive safely and look out for other people. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.